There are moments in life when every part of you wants to speak, to fight, to defend, to explain. You feel your heart racing, your chest tightening, your voice rising, and your truth pushing against your lips like waves against a dam. But then something deep inside you, not weakness, but wisdom, whispers, stay silent. Not because you are afraid, not because you're incapable of standing up for yourself, but because something greater is happening. Because you know that silence isn't surrender, it's a submission to something far more powerful than your words. It's a submission to Allah, who sees everything. When people hurt you, you feel it in your bones. When they lie about you, laugh behind your back, manipulate your kindness, it burns. You know what happened. You remember every word, every action, every betrayal. You carry it in your memory like a stone in your pocket, and yet you say nothing. You don't clap back. You don't correct the record. You don't explain yourself to people who already decided who they want you to be. Because deep inside, you've learned something life-changing. You don't need to avenge yourself when the all-seeing is watching every moment unfold. Allah knows your truth, and that's more powerful than 1,000 explanations. There is a sacred power in silence. The world has taught us that being loud equals being strong. But the truth is, anyone can shout. Anyone can react. It takes real strength to pause, breathe, and trust. To walk away from conflict with dignity still intact. To not stoop to the level of those trying to drag you down. Silence becomes your protection. It becomes your cloak, not to hide, but to elevate. Because while others are focused on the noise, your eyes are locked on a higher purpose, a divine audience. You know who's watching, and that's all that matters. Silence doesn't mean you don't feel the pain. Oh, you do. Sometimes staying silent is the hardest thing to do. When your character is being torn apart, when you're being accused unfairly, when your kindness is mistaken for weakness, staying quiet feels like swallowing fire. But it's in those very moments that your soul is rising. You are climbing a spiritual ladder that isn't visible to the human eye. You're not giving up, you're giving it over to Allah. You're telling Him, I trust you more than I trust myself to fix this. That's power. That's spiritual authority. That's submission wrapped in strength. People may call you passive. They may wonder why you didn't respond, why you let it go, why you didn't defend yourself when it was so obvious you were in the right. They don't understand what it means to be rooted in faith. They don't know the kind of restraint it takes to trust in divine justice rather than immediate vindication. Because the moment you respond to them, the moment you fight back with your ego, you lose sight of the bigger picture. But when you stay silent, you keep your eyes fixed on the reward, not the reaction. And when you fix your gaze there, you shift from the battlefield of people to the realm of divine mercy. Let them talk, let them judge, let them misunderstand you. You're not here to be seen by people. You're here to be seen by Allah. And He never misunderstands. He never misjudges. He never misses a moment of your struggle. While others see your silence as weakness, Allah sees it as a form of sabr, of strength, of worship. While others may forget what they did to you, Allah writes down every detail with perfect clarity. Your silence isn't empty, it's full of your faith. And in a world so loud with noise, silence rooted in belief becomes a sacred revolutionary act. There is a kind of peace that comes from not having to explain yourself to the world. A deep, powerful stillness that grows when you realize your worth doesn't need validation, your character doesn't need defending, and your truth doesn't need an audience. Not every lie deserves your response. Not every accusation deserves your energy, because when you know who you are, and more importantly, when you know that Allah knows who you are, there is no longer a need to waste your soul trying to convince people who are already committed to misunderstanding you. Your silence is not your defeat. It's your declaration that your value is not up for debate. You don't need to answer every whisper. You don't need to chase every rumor, every wrong word spoken behind closed doors. There are people in this world who will twist your silence into guilt, who will take your peace as weakness, who will assume that your lack of reaction means they were right. But their opinions are not your responsibility. Your dignity does not lie in their hands. You were not created to fit into their limited view of who they think you are. You were created to stand firm in who Allah made you to be. And that version of you does not shrink to meet the noise. It rises in the quiet. Sometimes silence is the only answer you need. Not because you don't know what to say, but because you've matured to a point where you don't have to say it. You've grown past the need to constantly defend your integrity. You've realized that some battles are not yours to fight. They belong to the one who sees both the intentions of the heart and the truth behind every situation. And when you truly believe that Allah is watching, listening, recording, and responding, your tongue becomes still, not from fear, but from faith. We live in a world that demands constant expression, where being loud is seen as strong and silence is mistaken for submission. But silence, when grounded in faith, is not a sign of giving up. It's a sign of rising above. It's saying, I don't need to lower myself to be heard. I don't need to trade my peace for a moment of satisfaction. Because what does it truly gain you to win an argument and lose your inner calm? What is the benefit of proving a point if it costs you your connection with Allah? Sometimes the loudest thing you can do is stay silent and let your Creator speak on your behalf. There will be times when you are the target of criticism, envy, slander, betrayal. Your name will be in rooms you've never entered. Your story will be rewritten by people who never knew the truth. And yet, the most powerful thing you can do is stay rooted in your character, grounded in your silence, and secure in your trust that Allah is not absent. He is not unaware. He is not silent in the face of injustice. He is patient. And through your silence, He is writing something bigger than your enemies can comprehend. Your response would only be a distraction from the divine plan He is already unfolding. You weren't made to chase after every opinion. You weren't made to wear yourself thin trying to clear your name in places that don't deserve your truth. When you live to please the people, you will die from their criticism. But when you live to please Allah, you learn to detach from the noise, the judgment, the constant need to prove. Your silence becomes sacred. It becomes the space where angels write your patience, where your prayers are heard, even without words, where your worth is affirmed not by the people, but by the one who created you. And that kind of silence is a protection this world will never understand. There are moments in life when your heart breaks, not with a loud crash, but with a quiet ache. The kind of ache that no one else sees, that no one else hears. You smile in front of people, you say you're okay, but inside you're carrying a storm. You lie awake at night thinking about the pain you never voiced, the words you never said, the injustice you quietly endured. And in those moments you may feel forgotten, as if no one understands, as if no one is listening. But what the world doesn't see, Allah hears with unmatched clarity. What people overlook, He writes with divine care. When you are silent and in pain, it is not an empty silence. It's a sacred one. It's the sound of your soul speaking directly to its Creator. There's a beauty in silent heartbreak that this world cannot comprehend. Because while people are distracted by what is loud and visible, Allah is drawn to the whispers of your heart. He listens to the cries that never reach your lips. He sees the strength it takes to smile when you're breaking. Every silent prayer, every suppressed tear, every breath you take just to hold yourself together, none of it is missed. None of it is wasted. He is closer to you than your own heartbeat. And in that closeness, He listens with a compassion that no human being can offer. While others may judge your silence, He understands the weight of it. While others ignore your struggle, He prepares a response that is better than anything you could imagine. Sometimes your silence is the greatest form of worship. When you resist the urge to scream, to retaliate, to explain yourself to people who don't care to understand, you're not weak. You're connected. You're holding on to the rope of patience, hoping that your silence will reach the heavens as a form of trust, as a sign that you believe Allah will make it right. And He will. The more silent you become in your pain, the louder your connection with Him becomes. He replaces your brokenness with strength. He feels your loneliness with His presence. He wraps your silent tears with mercy so deep that even your soul finds rest. You don't have to scream for attention. You don't have to beg to be heard. Because when your heart breaks in silence, you are not alone in the darkness. You are sitting with the one who created your light. You are being held by the one who knows every detail of your story, who remembers things about you that even you've forgotten. And in that silence, something beautiful is born. Not in your circumstances, but in your soul. A calm that doesn't come from resolution, but from trust. A strength that doesn't come from being heard by others, but from being seen by Allah. That is where healing begins, not from noise, not from answers, but from knowing that even in your most silent suffering, you are never alone. There comes a moment when you've tried everything. You've spoken your truth, you've clarified your intentions, you've extended patience to people who didn't deserve it, and you've stood tall in the face of disrespect. But it only led to more noise, more misunderstanding, more unnecessary chaos. And then, finally, you choose silence. Not because you've run out of words, but because you've stepped out of the storm and stepped into peace. In that moment, something incredible begins to happen. The power that once felt distant, the justice that once felt delayed, the healing that once felt impossible, all of it begins to unfold in ways you never imagined. Because when you fall silent, that is when divine power begins to move. Silence isn't absence, it's an invitation. An invitation for the unseen hand of Allah to start writing a chapter no one else saw coming. People often mistake silence for inaction. They assume you're doing nothing, that you've surrendered to the situation, that you've lost. What they don't see is the divine movement happening in the background. What they can't understand is that you've removed yourself from the drama and placed your heart in the hands of the one who never sleeps, who never overlooks, who never forgets. You've stopped fighting battles with words because you've learned that some victories are only won with silence and trust. The moment you fall silent, you make space for Allah to act in His wisdom, on His time, with His justice. And when He takes over, He settles the score in ways more perfect than any argument ever could. Sometimes the world wants a reaction from you. It provokes you. It pushes every button. It paints you in false colors, hoping you'll retaliate and prove its version of you. But when you remain silent, you do something revolutionary. You break the cycle. You disarm the attack. You frustrate the agenda, because silence is not passive, it's disruptive. It disrupts gossip. It disrupts assumptions. It disrupts the need to be right in every moment. It shakes the foundation of those who rely on noise to survive. And in that silence, the energy begins to shift, not because you've spoken, but because Allah has started answering. You don't always have to defend yourself. You don't always have to run after your dignity. There are times when the best defense is your stillness, and the best witness is the Creator who watched it all unfold. He saw what they said when you weren't in the room. He witnessed the betrayal that came from the ones you loved most. He recorded the nights you stayed awake holding back your tears just to protect someone else's image. And when you chose silence, He didn't take it as weakness. He took it as an offering, a sign of surrender to Him, not to them. And that is when the shift happens, not when you speak, but when you stop and let Him speak for you. There is something sacred about refusing to match energy with those who aim to harm you. Something profound about walking away without slamming doors, without throwing words like knives, without needing to prove a single thing. That restraint, that self-control, that quiet dignity, it's not a loss. It's a spiritual evolution. You're not losing ground. You're being elevated. You're allowing the one who sees all to act without interference. And when He steps in, He does so with a knowledge that is deeper than your wounds and with a plan that stretches far beyond the moment. His justice is not rushed. His wisdom is not impulsive. And His timing is not based on noise but on purpose. In your silence, you are not standing still. You are being carried. You are rising beyond the level of those who tried to pull you down. You are stepping away from the battlefield not because you are defeated, but because the war is no longer yours. It belongs to the one who always wins. And in that transition from noise to stillness, from reaction to reliance, from defense to divine trust, your life begins to align with something bigger than the pain, something greater than the temporary injustice, something eternal. There is a profound awakening that happens when you quiet the world and tune into the voice of your heart, the one that yearns for connection, not with people, not with approval, but with its Creator. The more silent you become, the louder your soul begins to speak. And in that silence, something sacred begins to stir. Your distractions fade, your defenses lower, and in the stillness you hear what you've been too busy, too hurt, or too overwhelmed to notice. That Allah has always been there, patiently waiting for you to return, to listen, to reconnect. That moment of silence is not emptiness. It is divine presence. It is clarity. It is a conversation without words. In a world that glorifies noise, opinions, arguments, performances, and endless validation, it takes courage to become still. Silence becomes a spiritual revolution, a way of removing yourself from the chaos so you can remember who you really are. You begin to feel things differently. Your heart softens. Your thoughts slow down. The space between your breaths becomes a sanctuary. You begin to notice the whispers of your conscience, the longing of your spirit, and most of all, the echo of Allah's remembrance within you. Silence strips away the layers of distraction that life and people have placed on you, and it brings you back to your origin, to your Creator, to the one who sees you when no one else does. Every moment you choose silence for the sake of Allah, whether it's in response to a harsh word, a test of your patience, or a situation that could drag you into sin, you're not just avoiding conflict, you're actively turning inward. You're choosing to strengthen your spiritual roots instead of feeding the fire of your ego, and in that intentional stillness you find yourself aligning with something higher, something purer. You begin to hear the verses you once rushed through, the du'as you whispered but didn't feel, the guidance that once felt distant now gently touching your soul. You begin to feel closer to Allah, not because your surroundings have changed, but because your soul has finally tuned into the right frequency. People may see your silence and think you are suppressing yourself, that you are avoiding the truth. But you know better. You're not suppressing your voice. You're raising your spirit. You're not running away. You're returning to Allah, to your center, to your fitrah. There is a strength in restraint, a power in pause. When you stop explaining yourself to the world, you start explaining yourself to your Lord. You begin to confide in Him the way you once confided in people who never truly listened. You cry, but you cry in suhud. You speak, but only to the one who never interrupts. You trust, not in outcomes, but in the wisdom of the one who controls them. As your silence deepens, your understanding begins to expand. You begin to see the world for what it is, temporary, noisy, fragile, and you begin to see Allah for who He has always been, eternal, listening, near. In your quiet, you begin to surrender more. Your heart becomes lighter, not because the problems have disappeared, but because you're no longer carrying them alone. You've placed them in the care of the one who can handle what you cannot. In silence, you find peace, not from having all the answers, but from knowing you are held by the one who does. And in those quiet moments, when the world fades into the background and the noise dissolves, your soul finally feels heard, because it is, by the one who created it, nurtures it, and never leaves it unheard. There are battles you fight in silence that no one else sees, struggles you endure with a smile on your face, while inside you're barely holding it together. You walk into rooms acting normal, answer questions as if nothing is wrong, laugh when you're expected to, and nod when people talk, all while carrying the invisible weight of pain, betrayal, disappointment, and exhaustion. These battles are real, they're heavy, and they leave marks on your heart. But while the world doesn't see them, Allah sees every detail, every tear that doesn't fall, every word you hold back, every time you choose peace when anger was easier. All of it is known to Him in complete, perfect clarity. You may feel alone, but you are never unseen. There's not a single moment that passes without His awareness. When you cry quietly into your pillow, when you suppress your emotions so others feel comfortable, when you let go of arguments to preserve peace, when you bite your tongue because you fear saying something that displeases your Lord, He sees that. When you walk away instead of fighting, not because you're weak, but because you've placed your trust in His justice, He records it. When your character is attacked, but you remain dignified and choose silence not out of fear, but out of reliance on Him, He honors that choice in ways the world cannot give. What people miss, Allah magnifies. What people forget, Allah remembers. What people dismiss as insignificant, Allah elevates as sacred. Every act of patience done quietly, every wound carried without complaint, every moment of heartbreak handled with faith, all of it is written down by the angels with precision. These are the private sacrifices that don't go viral, that don't earn applause, but that build an unseen palace in the hereafter. They are the moments that make you stronger, not in the eyes of people, but in the eyes of the Almighty. And that's the strength that endures. That's the kind of strength that doesn't fade with time, because it is built on trust in the one who never fails. You may not be praised here, you may not be recognized. The very people who caused you pain may never apologize. The situations that broke you may never get corrected, but Allah is not unjust. He is not absent. He is not unaware. He sees you when you're quiet. He knows what you chose not to say. He knows how much strength it took to stay kind when all you wanted was to scream. He knows how many times you gave people the benefit of the doubt when they didn't deserve it. He knows every intention, every heartbreak, every moment you showed up for others when no one showed up for you. And while the world sees your silence and moves on, Allah stores it. Every silent struggle becomes a prayer. Every act of patience becomes a seed. And what you plant in silence, He will cause to grow in ways beyond your imagination. The tears you shed that no one wipes away, He records them. The pain you keep buried, He counts it. The strength it takes to not give up, He rewards it. There is not a moment in your silent suffering that is forgotten, because while others see the surface, Allah sees the soul. While others only notice what you do out loud, Allah witnesses what you carry in secret. That is where His mercy begins, not just in your loudest cries, but in your quietest endurance. That's where the real story is written, not in the noise of life, but in the stillness of your unwavering faith.